to share my screen with everyone. So I will be speaking on tourism in Africa, but in specific, I'll be speaking on tourism as Africa's new oil. And this is the thesis I have defended for my postgrad. And I've now turned it into a project as well. So I'm just gonna full screen it. All right, so first of all, I would like to inform you on how I got to the name of Africa's new oil. As most of us here know, Africa is a continent that is natural resource rich, not necessarily in oil, but every African country or most African countries have natural resources, which are mainly they are form of getting receipts for their gross domestic product. So I just wanted to quickly touch on the history of oil in our continent. So the modern history of oil started in 1837 in Baku, Azerbaijan, where the first commercial refinery was opened, and paraffin was used to make candles and lamps during those times. After that, many more commercial refineries opened around 1854 in Poland, in 1857 in Romania, and in 1858 in Canada. But the biggest exploring companies were founded in around 1907, like Shell. Around 1908, Anglo-Persian was founded, which is now known as British Petroleum. And in 1911, Chevron was founded as well. Please just give me apologies for the second interruption. There was noise that was happening on the background. So as I was saying, the biggest oil exploring companies around the world were opened around 1907, such as Shell. In 1908, Anglo-Persian, which is now known as British Petroleum, was opened. And in 1911, Chevron was also founded in the United States. However, something interesting happened in 1960 in Baghdad, Iraq, where the OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, was founded. And this was founded with the objective of regulating the oil prices around exporting countries all over the world, and also to reduce the competition between member countries. So around the 2000s, some researchers conducted a research, and they came up with the term, the oil curse. So what the oil curse is that they found that the countries that were rich in this petroleum and these natural resources were also countries where social and economic inequalities were very high, were countries that had very poor infrastructure, and were also countries with a lot of poverty. So they started making the correlation and calling it the oil curse or the natural resource curse, where countries that are rich in natural resources or oil in specific were also countries that had big inequalities, poverty, and things of the sort. So this is also true for a country like Angola, where we are rich in oil, we export a lot of oil, but the social and economic equality is still something that is still to be found, is still to be adapted around the world. So in a country like Angola as well, where 92% of the GDP is oil dependent, we see the importance of what these natural resources are to our countries. They are mainly everything to the country because they are the ones that bring most of the resources, most of the money that is then funded into other places of the economy, because they are the economies that are very centralized in one thing and not diversified. So that's where the name Africa's New Oil came, because now I present a new opportunity or a new industry that can be as important as what oil is to some countries or natural resources are to countries in general. So what is this new oil and what does it bring? So I just want to share some facts about tourism around the world. So tourism, and these are statistics from 2019 from the UN World Travel Organization, was responsible for 10.4% of the global GDP around the world. And it's also responsible for 313 million jobs. In 2019, in the African continent in particular, we received 71 million international tourists. And out of those 71 million international tourists, we're able to make or to receive 38 billion of American dollars. So we can see that the tourism industry in the continent pre-COVID was going at a very fast rate and was a very important industry around the globe and the African continent as well that was looking to diversify away from the natural resources. So I want to give you the latest statistics. This is post-COVID. So this is 2020 when COVID hit and there was the lockdowns around the world, etc. And we can see that in terms of international arrivals, the continent of America decreased by 77%, Europe by 85% of international arrivals, and Africa also decreased by 85%. So what this means is that in 2019, we had 71 million international tourists in our continent. And in 2020, we only had 10,650,000 tourists, this all over the continent. So it's a very high number, and it shows a very alarming number of what the tourism is, or the tourism state is currently in our continent. So does tourism really work? Can tourism really be as important as oil? So here I bring one country in the continent to use as an example or as a sample. And I'm going to use South Africa, which is a country that in 2018 had received more than 10 million international tourists in a year. And tourism in that country in particular contributed about $9.1 billion to the economy. And it also represented 2.9% of the gross domestic product of the country, and also supported 1.5 million jobs directly. And when all indirect factors were counted in, this industry contributed about 27 billion rands into the economy. So here is just to illustrate the magnitude of what tourism can do for the continent and what it can bring in terms of economic prosperity. But why tourism? Why not agriculture or fintech or crypto or any other industry as the next oil for the continent? And I have three reasons. Because every tourism project, before it's done, it has to meet the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line is economic, social, and environmentally responsible. So in the economic sense, tourism brings financial prosperity. So tourists come from all over the world into a country or into a local area. They bring foreign exchange currencies. They need a place to sleep, food to eat, transportation to move around. And this means that they dynamize the local economy. They make it dynamic, they bring money in, and in turn, the locals become more wealthy, richer, and also have a little bit more for themselves. Socially, because tourism also promotes social cohesion and cultural exchange among people. So for tourism to happen in a sustainable form, the locals have to want it first. So the locals have to be welcoming, the locals have to be also benefited from this tourism surge that their country will bring. So let's say we go into a rural area where we have a very specific culture. Those people have to be spoken with before, they have to be mobilized and informed on what will happen. People will come here, they want to know a little bit about your culture, what do you eat, how do you dress, why your house is like this or like that. So it's very important that tourism brings social cohesion. So it does two things already. It brings economic prosperity and it promotes social cohesion and cultural exchange between people. And the last thing, which is very important, which is also becoming a very important topic in our era, is the environment. We're speaking today on climate change and how it will affect everything. So tourism is one of the industries that makes a lot of economic sense, but doesn't bring as much environmentally downfall. As you know, industries like oil or car manufacturers, etc., are industries that are very big on pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, noise pollution. But tourism doesn't bring all of that with it. It brings economic prosperity, but it's also environmentally sustainable. And it has to be done in a sustainable manner because tourism normally works with natural resources. So if you have a beautiful place, a sea, or a cultural place which is unique to a country, it has to be protected environmentally, because if it's not protected, it can then disappear because most of these resources are natural. So it's waterfalls, it's beaches, etc. So if they are not environmentally protected or taken care of, they disappear and they fade away with time. And that means that tourism will also stop in that area. So I believe most of the participants here perhaps are not people that study tourism or perhaps haven't had too much contact with that. So what can you do? Because it's one thing to be here and speak about the importance of this and how it's the new oil, etc. But what can each and every one do with this information and to make this possible? The first thing is be a host. So when somebody or when a tourist or when a foreign person comes into your country for a visit to go in and know a little bit more about yourselves and your culture, be a host. Be a person that's kind, be a person that's gonna be welcoming, that's gonna be warm, that's gonna take people in, show them around, treat them well, and avoid extorting. Because one thing that happens a lot in tourism is people extort. So something costs $1, but because this person is from outside, you then charge $10. Things of the sort are things that make us to not progress as much as possible. So be a good host. The second thing that we can all do is promote our country on social media. I know different countries have different challenges. Perhaps you don't like the government in place, or you don't like what is happening in your country currently because of this or that. But there are certain things that happen in each and every country that should remain for the people of that specific country. Internal problems are solved internally. When you speak about your country to the outside world, speak positively about it. Promote what is good in your country, may it be the people, may it be the places, etc. Because this creates an interest in other people in knowing your country, in wanting to invest in it, and also to help it grow. So I would say we can all promote our country positively on social media. So these are two things that I suggest. I only have 10 minutes, so I haven't put a lot into it, so that I don't take much of your time. But now, just to end my presentation, I would like to end with a little reflection or a story, if I can call it, about a small boy and a chicken. And this is an African proverb story about a little boy that went to visit his grandmother in a rural area. So his grandmother lives in a rural area. And because this child was an only grandchild to the grandmother, he didn't have anyone to play with. So the grandmother decided to buy him a chicken to be his friend. So the little boy got acquainted with the chicken and started playing with the chicken. But in rural areas, if you leave your chicken unattended, people eat it. So he wouldn't want his chicken, his friend, to be eaten. So he then tied a rope around the chicken's feet and put it close to his house, to his grandmother's house. That way the chicken wouldn't get lost, wouldn't run away, etc. But after a while, his grandmother went to speak to him and told him that there's an event in the community and the community needs this chicken to be eaten because we eat chicken, in parties, in certain events. But the boy, very sad, went to the chicken, saw it tied, and it untied the rope, and it tried to make the chicken run away. So it started shooing it, shoot, shoot. Chicken, go, run away, they want to eat you. But the chicken didn't run. And then he tried it again. He tried shooing the chicken, shoot, shoot. But the chicken didn't run. In my perspective, as Africans, we are like that chicken. Because once we got our independence, we were not given the know-how on how to develop ourselves, on how to develop our economies and become more sustainable. So we basically got our independence and they just looked at us and say, chicken run. But we didn't run because we did not know how to run. Today, as young people, we looked at and they tell us that Africa is a consumer's continent. Everybody here consumes but doesn't produce. But then the young African asks, how do I produce? How do I build a factory as big as Nike? How do I become a global magnet in business like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, etc.? How do I do that? Where do I get the knowledge to do that? Who are my references? Who are my African references that have done this before, that I can follow the footsteps and also do it for myself? So our generation, this generation, is the first to do a lot of things. In some families, we are the first to graduate from the university. In some families, we are the first to become rich. And in some families, we're the first to get on a plane. So while we're here and in whatever we do, I think it's very important we do it well, because all these things we are doing 20 years from now will be used as reference for the next generation on how to do a certain thing, on how to become a good lawyer, a good accountant, a good businessman, a good politician. We will be the reference for the next generation. So it's important that we do things and we do it well. Thank you.